Hey, welcome back, guys. We got another great show for you guys coming to you this fine Friday morning. Saints are playing the Rams this weekend, and we're going to go through the list of players, start looking toward the future, who's going to be here and who's not. We're going to talk about everybody that has a contract that can kind of be moved. We're going to talk about some people on the coaching staff. We're going to hit all of that in, maybe touch on some of this Rams game, even though it's starting to feel like these games are falling toward the back burner as the season continues to progress and the stories evolve more toward the future. We're coming to you from the Better Call BADEAUX podcast studio. And if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BADEAUX at 504-323-7777 or 985-303. Hit the 77777 for your free consultation and case review, BADEAUxLaw.com. And check out our friends, Firehouse Subs, Veteran Boulevard location. We're going to have an event there coming during the bye week. And you can come by, check us out, and we'll take some questions and answers and all that stuff during that event. So stay tuned. We'll have an exact date coming to you very, very soon. Let's go.
Gentlemen, what's going on? Mike, Nick, DJ. We here. It's on a Friday. I know here in the Austin area, the sun is not showing up. In New Orleans, the Saints are not showing up, but we show up. So
yeah, that's what we do.
Let's get into it. So yeah, as Nick said, yeah, we're gonna just kind of get into the, just some of the guys who may or may not be here next year, and we just gonna jump right into it. There's only one place to start with this conversation, and obviously it starts at the top, and I guess top of the coaching staff, and that's DA, right? And just when you look at how the season has gone, and not just the losses, but kind of how some of the losses happen, and there's some things that that do bring up some questions. So I think it's it's within the realm of possibility to start asking these type of questions. It's not an indictment on anyone, and none. It's just that's just the way the business goes. So let's start with you, Nick. DA, when you think of with respect to how the rest of the season is going to go, like, what do you think are the prospects for his further employment as the head coach of the Saints?
Yeah, well, starting out and analyzing this is not saying what I think should or shouldn't happen. And people seem to not understand that when you say, hey, this wouldn't make sense. They're like, you got to fire him. Like, no, I'm just saying what I think like is going to happen from an analysis perspective. It's
Mhm.
it's not me saying this is what's going to happen. I think that honestly, they're going to take the rest of the season to evaluate this and then they're going to figure it out from there. I don't think it's something that's going to be decided today. I don't think it's going to be decided Sunday. I don't think it's going to be decided the next Sunday. I think they're going to allow it play out. They're going to see how the locker room responds. They're going to see what the record is and then they're going to sit down and they're going to look at everything and they're going to say, how'd the locker room respond? Is our direction still making sense? Um, how much of a factor was injuries? Where is the future of this franchise? And then I think when you talk about that future, I think they're kinda at a crossroads and
Very much.
yeah, in either
Which is sort of the point of this whole exercise. Like, we're going to list probably 12, 14 names. And that's what these next 8 weeks are about, because there are major decisions coming for this team with the direction of the. There's not, hey, let's switch out these two things and then we're good to go. There are major crossroads is the absolute
yeah,
word.
and then there's 2 ways on that too, and
Yeah.
DA could go with them on either one. He could fall behind on either one, and they can change direction on this franchise and think that DA is somebody that could lead them to it, or they could decide it's not, but I think it's gonna be a big picture thing.
Yeah.
I think as far as projecting who's gonna be the coach next year, right now it's impossible to see, and right now, it's almost unfair to make that because I think it's in just such a dark place right this
Right.
moment that it's hard to see them winning another game the way things are
It
going
really
right now.
is.
And
It
if
really
keeps
is.
Kev,
We were
man,
just talking before we went on air that we cannot believe they're favored to beat the Rams. I feel like you could make the Rams 10-point favorites. I'm not saying the Saints can't win,
yeah.
but I feel like they should be 10-point underdogs. They just lost to Pittsburgh by 10, and they couldn't make up those 10 points to save their lives.
Who did you guys pick to win the game? We didn't. I don't think we did predictions, but like in your head, like who did you have winning this last week? Was it the Steelers or the
Steelers. Yeah,
Saints?
Steelers. They were missing so many players. You couldn't
Yeah.
logically and come to a conclusion where you thought the Saints were going to win with 10, 11, 12 players out of the game. And that's kind of the issue that's facing DA right now. But look, when I look at it, to answer Kevin's question without, I beat all the way around the bush and now I'm back to the bush and now I got to walk into it. If I'm making a projection, I got to think that things aren't going to turn around right now. It just doesn't feel like it. And again, they might get healthy and everything might be off and running, but there's, it just feels like the signs and everything's heading the wrong way. They're learning how to tackle in week 11, week 12 of the NFL season. It just feels like things are really, really sideways right now. They got to figure out how to straighten it out. And I think the players are really it's kind of in their hands at this point. And maybe they just aren't good enough. And that's the other thing that Mickey Loomis is going to have to look at, and Dennis Lauscha when they decide, and Gail Benson when they decide who's going to be at the helm next year and who isn't.
Well, yeah, we're analyzing the situation. We know Mickey Loomis's MO pretty well. He's an incredibly reasonable guy.
Super patient.
He's patient, but he doesn't make decisions based on emotion. So he's going to look at this and he's going to know what to blame on DA and what not to. And some of this stuff really can't be blamed on DA. I mean, the injuries are almost worse than they were last year. Just starting last week, when you're now losing Pete Werner and 3 offensive linemen, and they might go into this game without Marcus Davenport and Cam Jordan. We haven't seen practice yet. You don't start to say, well, he's 3-9. That's not what Mickey Loomis is going to say. Mickey Loomis is going to know how many of those games could we have actually won. But he is going to evaluate him on how does he handle in the quarterback situation, which has turned into a little bit of an ugly mess. Are the players quitting on him? Does he seem lost with no idea how to get out of a spiral? How much of the fundamentals, like some of that stuff, I think DA is probably getting a little too much blame.
Yeah.
I saw something on Twitter today where somebody, they showed the throwback uniforms and somebody said, finally, a good decision by DA. And right away, someone replied, how do you know that was his decision? Like they won't let DA have
Well, here's a question. I mean, Mike, when you say how much do you put on DA, should his struggle as much as they are with Pete Werner and say they didn't have Davenport this past week?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think I texted that to Nick. I said that would be bailing him out of a lot of other things if his one specialty was still special. Like if it turns out that he's not great at giving speeches or making quarterback choices between two unattractive choices at quarterback, and he can't handle injuries, and all of a sudden there's a false start epidemic under him. I don't think anyone would blame him for all that stuff if his defense was still getting the job done, and his defense isn't getting that job done, which really hurts. But what I was going to say about what I think the decision will be is if the Saints were just going to run it back and say, we know this team is way better and these, the injuries ruin this season, basically the same decision they made last year, which is they thought last year was an anomaly because of this avalanche of injuries and COVID. They kind of ran it back this year without Sean Payton, but ran it back with the rest of the coaching staff and the players. If that was the direction they were going to go, I think DA would get a second year. But we've actually seen this ownership in a very similar circumstance realize Stan Van Gundy for the Pelicans was not the right direction. Veteran coach, veteran team. And they decided we want to find the next, young guy, up and coming, Sean Payton type, Willie Green. And so they fired Stan Van Gundy after 1 year because they had a whole different, they were like, that wasn't the right approach. The approach should be young guy, rebuild, new energy, new. I think that's what could get Dennis Allen fired after 1 year is if they decide they want a different approach. I don't think that they are going to come to the conclusion after they've worked with Dennis Allen for like a total of a decade, that he's just an incompetent coach who doesn't know how to do any of this stuff. But they might decide they chose the wrong direction for the franchise and they just need a fresh start.
To answer that, I don't think that they have to decide that, though. I think that he's going to show them. Like he's showing them. And honestly, I don't think this is really going to be decided on wins or losses for a lot of the reasons you just said. I don't think that you can really go into it and and make that determination off of like, okay, he lost the Pittsburgh game. All right, but all these
that's
guys are out.
not part
So
of the equation.
yes,
But
so it's all the
what did guys come in the building and say on Monday? Did they come in not giving,
it's the details.
tuning out everything they said, not respecting him, privately disagreeing with every choice he's making? And they know that stuff better than us, but I think that stuff's all in play right now.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think that, I'm with you, Nick. I think it'll play itself out through the rest of the season. But the thing is, if the team does not even become competitive, I don't think there's no way that I think that's the thing, right? Like, you can't these last couple of games, you just go into these games feeling like they didn't even have a chance to win. And I think that's, it's one thing where you're Dan Campbell and the guys are playing hard for you. You're in these really close games. You can just see that it's just a talent issue maybe in Detroit, but you can see the guys playing hard and just trying to do everything they can to win. And they were somewhat competitive. I'm talking last year. And I think that's what they, for DA's sake, I think that's what the Saints have to get back to. It's okay to have an injured team. It's okay to have a team that lacks talent because that happens in the NFL, right? And coaches don't always have a lot of control over things like that. But when I think you see a team that's just not being competitive and they don't feel like they have a chance to win the games, I think that becomes a little bit of an indictment on the coach because it's something that I just think it's unacceptable. You have to put a product on the
totally
field.
fair game. If the last 8 weeks look like Baltimore and Pittsburgh did, he's done.
Yeah,
I completely agree.
They gotta play with the energy of Caden Ellis and Alontae Taylor, and you kinda gotta just see that, or the way the Cincinnati game started, or the way the Arizona game started.
Mhm.
That's how this stuff's gonna be decided. If they keep responding to the coach and you see the coaching working, I think you can look at some of the situational stuff and the injuries and all that. But look, if you keep missing tackles and you keep
Yeah.
having false starts, and
Mhm.
right now their defense is worst expected points added per penalty, worse in the league. They
Which is
are
insane. I mean,
yeah,
that's who has to save him. And
their offensive penalties
the
are
defense has to
third.
save him, and it needs to show, do they love the guy? Because the defense knows they're playing for like some of these guys that could check out. I mean, I guess Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May don't count because they're new. They don't love DA, but like Cam Jordan and David Onyemata and Demario Davis, they're the ones who need to save DA's job. Marshawn Lattimore, when he comes back, if there's a fire in their belly that they don't want this guy to take the fall, then they better start playing A+ defense down the stretch.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you mentioned Cam. I remember Cam saying, "Hey, we don't want DA getting interviews because we don't want him to leave his defensive coordinator, right? Well, he's head coach now. So, you need to bring that same energy to it. And I'm not saying this on Cam. I'm just saying this as a collective unit. Those guys need to, kind of step up into his shoes. Let's get into another coach on this staff, and that is Pete Carmichael. I guess, part of it is when I look at it is like, okay, well, they're a package deal. So I think it's a little bit of a tough.
Not necessarily, though.
Yeah. Well, go
If
ahead.
DA
Speak
gets
on
a
that.
chance
Yeah.
to say job, that might be the
Elaborate.
first place he turns, unfortunately. I mean, that makes, I think, the degree of difficulty for Pete Carmichael to keep his job twice as hard as DA, because
Well,
Pete
I
could
did
lose his job
mention.
2 different ways. The package deal way, if Dennis is gone, Pete's gone, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
Clean house.
That's what I meant. Like,
If
it's hard for
Dennis
Pete to stay in.
stays, it could also be, but we need to take the direction in a totally new offense. So that puts Pete on an even hotter seat, I think, when you add those two possibilities together.
That's fair. And Nick, you could speak to this. I mean, there was a point of the season where where the O line was healthy, where they were one of the. I mean, they just were playing well. They were ranked. I don't think they were as good as their rank was, but I don't know what that means because they were ranked where they were ranked. So yeah, at one point the offense was at the close to the top of the league in offense when they were healthy. So how how much do you think that helps Pete, or do you think it's just a big an indictment on him as it is on DA on the other side of the ball?
It's tough, man. I mean, like they haven't had continuity at quarterback. The offensive line's been hurt. Their plan at
Mhm.
wide receiver has fallen apart. But like Mike said, I think if there's an opportunity to change things up, I think that's probably going to be something that would be someone's going to probably have to go after this season. And if it's not DA, they might make a change on the offensive staff and feel like, all right, let's get a new direction here, especially if they bring in a new quarterback. And I think if you do bring in if you get a rookie, say you get Hooker in the second round or you trade back up in the first to get him, it might make a lot of sense to throw away this playbook that's been just growing and growing and becoming more and more monstrous over the last 20 years and go into something that's more simple and that has a more streamlined vocabulary, something that has a simpler passing offense. The league's just kind of changed a little bit in kind of having these complex reads and all these, things that you got to go through. Whereas you want a quarterback that can maybe move and do things a little bit more freely, which is the direction of the NFL now. I don't know if this offense lends itself to that as much. So if you do get to a point where it's time to start over with a new guy, I don't know if you want to take a
Mm-hmm.
2023 rookie and put him in the
Yeah,
2006 Drew Brees offense. It might be time for
that's
a
a good
little bit
point.
of a change. I think keeping it together for now made a lot of sense
Yeah.
because you're bringing back Jameis Winston. The idea was to make things easy for him. That was kind of my thought process. Obviously, I think some of the stuff with play calling, some of the decisions they've made could be a little bit different. But I do think, to be fair to Pete Carmichael, that it has been hard to operate
Yeah.
a little bit this year with some of the stuff that's been going on. I think his hands are tied a little bit. I think that he's kind of been told to call games a certain way in certain situations, and it's just been a tough year for everybody on the staff. But I think just realistically, everybody that is a coach for this team right now, their seat's hot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just realistic right now. Whether you go or you stay, I think everybody's
Yeah.
just the way the season is played out. Are you developing? Is this the direction? Are we getting better at these spots? And if the answer is no, it's time to change things up. And I think on offense, I think everybody kind of has a spotlight on them a little bit more because you got to now go back and evaluate everything through the prism of, and this is top to bottom through the whole organization. How much of a factor was Sean Payton in this? And I think for us sitting here, I think for the people sitting in the front office, I think for the people on the coaching staff, the people in that locker room, there's probably been some aspects of oh man, like Sean was the impact to him is here and now he's gone and you're feeling him in places where you didn't necessarily think you'd feel him. I know myself when I evaluated this team coming into the year and saying it should be this and this and the continuity all makes sense. I definitely see things that are happening where it's like,
Yeah.
was Sean's hands in there? Was he making that better? And it's shocking in some cases that the answer is yes. And I think his presence also probably just elevated everybody on the coaching staff and the front office everywhere, the players. And it's taking him out, I think, lowered the floor more so than anybody expected. And whether you agreed with the direction or not, I think it's shocking to see kind of how far that floor is lowered.
Yeah, and I'm not taking credit for this take or whatever, but my thought on Sean Payton was, uh, in some ways, what we've seen, which is I thought everybody could handle things if they were going well, and Sean Payton would be missed most if things weren't going well.
Yeah.
That's when they were
But
going to
Sean
be,
kept things going well.
yeah, exactly. But to be again fair to Pete Carmichael, I don't blame him more than Dennis Allen. I
No.
actually would give Pete a better grade than I would give DA for
I would do
what
the
we've
same
seen this
thing.
season.
They've
Yeah.
they've had more better offensive games
Yeah,
this year, no
I
doubt.
just think he's in more trouble because of what I said, that obviously if DA gets fired, Pete gets fired too. Whole new coaching staff if DA gets fired. But I mean, DA considered trying to change out offensive coordinators in his first offseason anyway. It feels like the move he would absolutely make if he goes into next year as a desperate man who, I mean, we've already heard him and some players say that, well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing. I mean, that's the obvious move I think he makes if he's desperate and he knows he gets one more shot at this is, I don't think we're going to see a run everything back.
And
think
yet
that-
they keep doing the same things over and over.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and look, everybody has some blame. There's enough blame to go around, and I think
Yeah.
that's clear. But with Pete, I mean, I would say there's some things
And he
on
would
offense.
not. First of all, Pete also would probably get snatched up pretty quickly, I think, unless he wants to take a year off. I still think his reputation is good, where he'd get another job somewhere else. Pretty quickly,
Sean needs an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to say I know a coach that'll hire him, right? Yeah, I mean, I'd say, hey, Sean, hey, you got to throw in the extra third for Pete or something. I don't know, but I mean, I think if I was to say, on the offense side of the ball, I think the penalties are some of the things, and the repeated penalties are what I would say is one of the biggest indictments that I would put on that side of the ball. But when you lose, I mean, when I look at the offense from the training camp, I don't think they really ever had a chance. Their quarterback was hurt. Mike Thomas was never on the same page with Jameis. Like, those guys never played together. Like, we really still don't have a really good idea of what this offense should look like. It'll be one of the biggest what ifs because those guys never got on the field together, right? They were never healthy. They were never cohesive. With the defense, I don't see that same issue. I mean, those guys, they just were not good this year. it was you can't blame defense. Maybe at a certain point you could blame it on injuries
You
because
said this year,
Marshawn
like
got
the
hurt.
season's over. You're done.
Yeah. I know,
You're
right? It's a
speaking in
wrap.
hindsight already. There's 7 more
It's
games.
cooked.
No
man.
way. There's going to
it's
be
cooked.
3 games late in the year where they play Carolina, Atlanta, and they have like Marshawn back, and they're like shutting him out, and they're like, all
Well,
right,
they need
let's
to
run it
use
back
those
next
games
year.
to not give away a top 3 pick. But what I'm saying is there were times where the defense was at relative full strength and they didn't look good, right? And that is a huge indictment
no question.
on DA. And with the offense, again, they've not been good. I'm not giving them a pass, but I don't know if they ever really had a good chance because Jameis hurt his, I think he hurt his foot. Mike had his injury he was dealing with. The guys have just been in and out of the lineup repeatedly. Same thing as last year. So this offense, we don't know what it would have looked like at full strength. If Jameis had a full training camp with all of his weapons and things like that, and he didn't get hurt. So I give Pete a little bit,
though, man. I'm over the idea of the unknown and the upside and the potential and all
Yeah,
that
but
stuff.
that's
Like
true.
I'm not buying into it anymore. Like we
Well,
just kind of.
it's not potential. It's just we don't know because we haven't seen it. Yeah,
Right. I'm not even cooking your opinion here. Like I'm just saying in general. Like I'm just tired of talking we've been talking about it for 3-4 years now. Going back to
What's it gonna? Yeah.
What
we
could
gotta
Taysom
stop.
be?
We definitely
What
have
could
to stop.
Jameis be?
We definitely have to stop putting Mike Thomas in the conversation because
all of
I
it.
don't think you can do
All of
what
it.
will this offense look like with a healthy Mike Thomas. I think you almost have to.
What if Jameis does this? And look, I'll say this about like the Jameis to Alvin thing. Like that thing has almost become like a meme where we've stripped, and I'm saying everybody has stripped all context out of it. It's become to this point where people talk about it as if he can't throw the ball to him at all. I think that's a little overblown. It could be done a little bit better. So I think that's just one thing though. But like that's another what if talking point. It's just we've been talking about the offense in theory since the day Drew Brees retired, and the theory has not hit a single time. And it's just at this point, there's not this thing where they're bringing in somebody and like they're gonna just revitalize them. And it's like the home improvement show where there's the board and they pull it off and it's a beautiful home. Like they pull the board off and it's worse. Like the shutters are not hung right, and it's just not getting better.
Are you talking
ready to
about
see
how
your
the
fixer
studio
upper?
was built? This basically sounds like Nick is taking us through what happened.
Hey, the studio is beautiful.
But look,
man.
it
The
eventually
studio is-
got here.
The
so
studio
this
is
is
beautiful.
the dream.
Yeah, there were some hardships getting it built, and it came out beautiful. But like, it's just not happening, and it's been 3 years now, and it's just not. It's not going to be that anymore. And it's just
with a bad offense, we know this team has been what did they win 9 games last season, and now you look at this year, and I think that relatively same roster, we can make a case that a couple of guys are better, worse. I mean, a couple of positions are worse, but for the most part, it's not significant enough for it to be, flipped as much as it is. Excuse me. So yeah, I mean, I was just juxtaposing, I guess I was pitting Pete against.
No, your point is fair. Your point is fair.
Mike's
I'm just so exhausted of the.
Yeah.
It's just I'm over the idea of.
Yeah, I don't
and
think
you weren't
there's,
even
like-
making the point. You just set me off on like it's just
I
like
know, I
I'm
know.
done. I'm done doing that.
I
I
will
call
tell
it
you what,
stray.
though.
I call it stray. I call it big stray. I
I'll
call
tell
it
you
stray.
what. I'll tell you what exhausts me though is, I wish we could see this team once or twice.
Yeah.
I want to know what it might look like. The injury reports Pittsburgh week and Rams week have really taken all the wind out of my sails. Like I know injuries can't be the only thing we blame, but my God, like I thought there was going to be some point this year where we saw what this team looked like when it was relatively healthy. And how about it wasn't that long ago they beat the Raiders 24-0, and we're like, and they're going to get Marshawn back soon, and we're like,
Fourth quarter
this
of the
might be
Falcons
good.
game.
That feels
Yeah, the
like
fourth
2
quarter of the
years
Falcons
ago.
game was the only place we got to see that. So, all right, let's move. Let's move through some other guys because I think we beat Pete and Da into the ground. Jameis Winston. When you look,
Hold on,
at,
would anybody be happier of Twitter dying than like the Saints right now? The
Oh,
coaching
oh,
staff,
man.
the front
Oh, man.
office.
Oh, bro.
They're
They
trying
might
to
be
overload
behind
the
it.
servers right now. Like they probably got a little bot farm up hitting those servers,
Yeah,
hoping it goes down, and
yeah.
Elon can't get it back up because it is ugly out there right now, man.
Yeah, they got Repo. They got Alex in there just sending out little funny Pelican and Saints tweets with bots embedded in them, trying to take the whole service down. Come on, Repo. That's funny. I just thought of that. Like I can just see them coming up with the solution to these problems is to bring Twitter down, not fix the thing.
That's true. If Twitter goes down, I take back what I said. DA and Pete stay if Twitter goes down.
Everybody's fine. We're gonna run it back for the third year, buddy. All
Yeah.
right, man. All right. All right. So quarterback. Quarterback. So I got obviously I have Winston and Dalton. We could talk about both of these guys. We don't need to separate them, but going into the next season, the Saints don't have a first round pick. The most catastrophic decision that you can possibly make, but they made it, and this is where they are. And they don't. It's going to be hard to get a quarterback. This is that simple. It's hard to get a quarterback when you do have a pick. It's even harder to get one when you don't have one and you have a struggling roster, and some of the other challenges they have. So, what is the likelihood that you think that one of these two guys may end up back on the team given the situation they're in? We can start with you, Mike.
Yeah, I think they're both gone unless something changes that narrative down the stretch, which is entirely possible. We'll start with Jameis because he's the one who's under contract for next year, but he's supposed to make $12.5 million next year. So things are really going to have to change with that situation, and that goes both ways. Like, there's obviously a mistrust that's developed on both sides. Dennis Allen has made it clear he doesn't have a lot of confidence in Jameis Winston. He tried to replace him with Deshaun Watson. He quickly replaced him with Andy Dalton. And seemed very excited to stick with Andy Dalton after just seeing 2 good weeks with him. So I don't think Dennis Allen has a lot of confidence in Jameis Winston, even if he were to get back healthy. The only way for that confidence to come back, or for the organizational confidence to come back in Jameis Winston, is if he gets healthier and plays. Maybe the 3 weeks after the bye is enough for that. Or is it 4 weeks after the bye? There's 4 games after the bye. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that might be enough. But that's what it's going to take for Jameis Winston to come back, is he starts those last 4 games and he looks the best he's ever looked in a Saints uniform. Otherwise, the combination of his big salary, the lack of confidence they've shown in him, the lack of confidence he feels from the team, I think it's likely headed for divorce. Dalton, in theory, I would have told you 2 weeks ago, he's probably likely to be the veteran who stays next year, while they also consider a younger alternative and developmental alternative. But the bottom has dropped out so much on him. He's going to need better games, I think, to be back. And they're both going to be competing against the Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston types that I think the league is going to be full of next year, because there's going to be so many more rookie quarterbacks in the league. That's going to be 6 more veterans who are out there for basically free. I think Teddy Bridgewater could be had for free. I think certainly Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold could be had for free, and some other guys we're not thinking about. If they make a coaching change, does somebody who's worked with Gardner Minshew want to bring in Gardner Minshew? Like, there's just so many cheap alternatives that are sort of in that same level of second or third tier quarterback, or whatever you want to say, that I have a hard time seeing either of them be the veterans that's
So
back
before you
next
go,
year.
Nick, I'm gonna give you the names. I just looked up the quarterbacks who may potentially be free agents, and just some of these names obviously sound crazy: Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Geno Smith, Daniel Jones potentially, Garoppolo, Minshew, Mayfield, Donald. Then we get into the Cooper Rush, Flacco, PJ Walker, Andy Dalton, Teddy
There's a
Bridgewater
couple
names.
young, interesting ones that are like a year away from free agency, like Jordan Love and why am I blanking on the back, Tyler Huntley, that would
for
be
the
a bigger
Ravens.
move that would require premium draft choices and two. But there's gonna be a lot of options.
Yeah, look, on the Jameis thing, I think if he stays, they probably have to approach him. And this is kind of speaking on it now before he gets back out on the field, and him having success could change everything about the perception of this. But I think right now, as you look at it, I think there's 2 things that are very likely to happen. If the Saints, if they decide they want to keep him around, they're going to approach him and say, "You got to take less money, or we're letting you go." And I think very likely Jameis would say, "All
Yeah,
right, I'm going,"
you
because
guys have
he
beat
isn't
me up
coming back.
enough.
He
Yeah,
isn't coming back
yeah.
for this. I don't
He
think that
he
he
doesn't
likes the way
feel
he was
any
handled.
belief
Yeah.
from this
So
organization. If they come to him with that would be the last
yeah,
straw,
there's
I
no
think.
way that he would accept that. So I think he would probably go out and test the market. And then, yeah, you're looking at other guys. They might bring Andy back. I think that would be extremely uninspiring. I think that he's kind of shown you what he can do here. I think you got to aim a little bit higher. And as far as the list Kevin just read, I think that you kind of draw a line at Jimmy Garoppolo, and who cares
Mm-hmm.
underneath that? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
just kind of
yeah,
it's kind of like you're
exactly.
getting a guy in there to fill it. I think that there's a lot of sense in spending $18-20 million, especially because the cap's going to bloat in a couple of years, to just keep your team in a place where you're playing for something, to keep Chris Olave developing and getting better, to take advantage
Mm-hmm.
of the end of Alvin Kamara's career, to have a shot of winning 8, 9 games and making the playoffs. But you do also have to have a certain sense of who you are. And I wouldn't go too much higher than probably
Yeah.
20. I think that
Well,
you just kind of stay in a place where you try to continue to compete, continue to try to be successful, and maybe just not do the whole all in, let's
Yeah.
go for it type thing. But I think there's a sensibility, especially if you can structure a contract in a certain way and you start looking at it and you have a fixed plan to say, all right, these guys that aren't part of our future beyond here, this is when they come off the books. This is when they come off the books. This is when they come off the books. Structuring a quarterback contract to just be a little bit better than Dalton, so that maybe your defense can play a little bit better, and maybe everything
Yeah.
else can kind of fall into place a little bit. Would be somewhat sensible.
Let's move on a little bit. A couple other guys. Mike Thomas. What are the prospects that Mike is going to be retained? I know earlier we spoke about him. We got to think about him in a different light. It's not like you're getting the best receiver in the NFL back. You're getting a question mark back next year. So, when you think about, Mike Thomas, Nick, let's start with you. What do you think about, his prospects going forward with this team?
I think it's a very, very slim hope that he's back on this team. I mean, it just kind of makes too much financial sense. I think too much has happened. I think at this point you just kind of gotta move on. You got to get that money off the books. Maybe you talk Mike into taking a massive pay cut and sticking around because you got to go somewhere else. But if I'm Mike, even at that point, I want to go somewhere else with a different quarterback. I'm not coming back here to play with
Yeah.
Andy Dalton or Teddy Bridgewater. Like, nobody in the world would want to play with either one of those
sign
guys.
Garoppolo and then Michael stay.
No, I don't think
I'm
that
just
either.
kidding.
But no,
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I think he's going to want to move
Yeah.
on and be in a better situation.
I agree. It's hard to see the path. I mean, the only way he stays is if his agents ask around and find out that he needs to sign a $5 million deal with $10 million in incentives, or $8 million deal that can be up to $16 million with incentives.
Is that where
And
Mike
for
is right now? Is that where is
no,
that
I'm
where
saying
he
the
is as
only
a
way he
player?
stays is if he finds out that's all he's going to get anywhere, and for some reason he wants to
I think
stay
Mike's
and
making it
make
clear
it
he
work
wants a
here.
fresh start too.
Yeah,
I mean, all the
yeah,
stuff he's
yeah.
tweeting, it just makes it seem like
and he clearly is not happy with the medical staff here. But I'm saying the only path to him staying is him realizing that's all I can get. The Saints are offering it to me here, and I want to make it work here. But
It's a tough bet. It's a tough bet for any. I mean, you got a player who's making $20 million a year who hasn't played, football in, a couple of years. And so, I think if you're the Saints, it's hard to look at the way things are, look at your cap and see that guy, and stay on the roster. And I get it. And, Mike still thinks of himself as Mike Thomas, as he probably should. In his mind, injuries are the
and
only
I think
reason I'm
someone
not.
would pay for it. I think someone else would bet on it still.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're looking at someone, to trade, then that's that may be a guy, right?
Whew, I
And
don't even know what his tradability would be at this point. I don't think you get a whole lot back for him. I mean, he hasn't
well, if
played in
it's
3
better than
years.
cutting him, though, it would be better
Well,
than
no,
cutting him,
that's
though,
not
right?
true though, because if you trade him, you can't June 1st him. So
Well, you could hold him and then make the deal after June 1st. I mean,
but nobody's doing that. They want him in their camp, in their building. They're
I mean,
not
we've
waiting
seen it
till
though. I mean, if that was kind of what you had to, but you aren't getting any. You're getting a very, very late
That'd be
round
it
pick
for
for
a
him if
sixth
you get
round
someone
pick
to
at the
replace.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he's probably getting cut.
And
I
that
mean,
might
the
even-
only way he stays is if he's like, I know that I have to take a massive pay cut and I want to make it work here. And I think that's such an unlikely path.
And even without the June 1st thing, I don't think you're getting much more than a day 3 pick for a guy that hasn't played in 3 years.
No.
And that's just the reality. And it's
I know.
insane to say that,
I
but it's
know.
just, how can you can't give a
Well-
high level pick for a guy that hasn't played in so long.
Now, another team might invest in him, but they're not trading for his $16 million salary is the problem.
Yeah, it's just a money deal. Yeah,
So
it's the only way.
this coming up year is year 4 of it's not the last year of his contract. It's
Right.
the year before.
No,
the
he's
last
got
year
a
of his
couple
contract.
more, I think. Because
Is there
I could
any
be
scenario
wrong.
that exists where they just keep him on the team? You think?
Without touching
not
the contract,
current price. Not at current price.
yeah, no chance. I just, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You can't do it. It's just, it's such an obvious place to clear money to. And again, like,
Mhm.
you don't have the offense anymore. You don't have the quarterback. You don't have the answer at quarterback.
Yep.
Just investing in that without, like, Mike Thomas at this point, without the playtime, like, he was a guy that I thought that was kind of, you keep him around to make things easier for the quarterback. So you're spending on him while you have the cheaper transitory quarterbacks. But at this point, that's not how it's working anymore. So Mike almost feels like a luxury item now, whereas it felt like he was the wheels on the
Yeah.
suitcase before, and it's just really not that situation anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, only one thing I thought about was like, man, it would make it tough for Chris Olave, but it's been like that all season for him. So he's used to he's used to playing without the guys. So, yeah. Another player that's interesting is Marcus Davenport. He's a free agent this year. He's on his 5th year. So, you think they just let him walk, or do you think they try to negotiate something with him? I mean, his price is probably at an all-time low. Do
It's
you
still
think?
gonna be high, though. It's still gonna be high. I think teams know that ceiling and teams pay for that ceiling. I mean, I think he gets more than Trey Hendrickson got. I honestly do. But I think the Saints like him. Like, I can't believe how ineffective he's been this year, at least in sack production totals. But I think he's still putting decent tape out there, and now he's hurt again, and injuries are a huge factor with him too. So
Mhm.
what's the franchise tag for defensive ends? They can't really mess around with the franchise tag
Mm-mm.
because you can't
Mhm.
backload the cap costs on a franchise tag deal. I think they want to try to keep him though. I don't think this is going to be a Trey Hendrickson and Marcus Williams this past year situation where they don't even offer him a deal. I think they're going to be in it. I think it'll be more like the talks they had with Teron Armstead. If someone's going to pay you, we're going to have to let you go. But if you don't find what you're looking for out there, we'll keep you. That's a tough one for me because I think he could be a part of their next 5 years. And I think they'd love to keep him, but they're going to have financial constraints.
For me, it kind of depends on the overall whole process with the franchise. If they try to remain a good team, like if they are spending on a quarterback and they're doing other things, I think you pay Davenport. If you're at a spot where you're just not doing that, I think you let him go. I mean, he's what, in 3 years, where are you going to be if you aren't making those commitments to try to keep winning? So you're probably 3 years away from that, and you're paying him money to kind of be a good player on a bad team.
Yeah.
That doesn't add up to me. So if you're transitioning, I think you get rid of them. If you're trying to remain competitive, I think you keep them, and that's what they're going to kind of have to decide. I think it's a dangerous deal to do though, because
Mm.
he's like how like Josh Beckett used to be as a pitch. Like it was like every other year he would have a good year. Like that's Davenport right now. He's
Yeah.
every other year. One year you're getting 9 sacks. One year you're getting a half. One year you're getting 6.5. One year you're getting 0. It's it's a very tough player to pay because you just don't know
Right.
what he's going to be every single season. And I think that his tape still looks good. I think he's still around the quarterback. I did a study last week about how quickly he was getting pressures and if there was a major change, and that it's just not. So
I
I
think
think
he's gonna get
some of that's
paid.
luck.
I think he's
Oh,
gonna
I think
get
he's gonna get money too. I think he's
remember
down
how
though.
everybody's like, how did Christian Kirk get $20 million? Like based on what? Like teams are gonna look at that and be like, he's exactly
Yeah.
what we need. Somebody's gonna pay him.
It is a little
And he'll probably thrive somewhere. Like the Saints also, we say they make reasonable decisions instead of emotional ones. If they let Marcus Davenport go, they need to be prepared to watch him, go to Pro Bowls and make some all pros with someone else because that's still the potential he has.
but the thing is, like, he'll have an all-pro season, and
Yeah.
then next season you won't know
Yeah.
what it's gonna be. But I do think that his value probably has dropped a little. I mean, it's had to have.
Yeah.
Like, if he had another 9, 10 sack season,
Yeah.
he's breaking the bank and
Yeah.
possibly setting the market at that position if he
Yeah.
has a 12.5 sack season or
Yep.
something. No doubt there's a little bit of a dip, but people pay for pass
Yeah.
rush. They're desperate for pass rush. It's why the Saints trade up in the draft for pass rush. I mean, it's just really, really hard to get these players, and they don't hit the market. So when someone does, they always cash out. He's gonna get paid. It's just it's hard for me. I got to know the whole direction of the team to know if he's worth it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I stand at it because if you let him go, you're with Cam being the age that he is, and we'll talk about Cam in a second, and then with Peyton Turner not having this success, you're basically nuking your defense. At the end
And
of the day,
David
that's it.
Onyemata is a free agent too, and I don't know if we'll even get to him in this
Well,
conversation, but I don't think he's back. I don't think he's back either. Yeah.
let's just jump right to Onyemata. Let's just go from Davenport to
One
Onyemata.
last point on the pass rushers. It's hard to fathom that they're in a position
Oh,
where they've
after all the
invested so
investments.
much in it. They've done everything they could to set themselves to be in a good spot post Cam Jordan. And Cam Jordan still being good is the only reason that this isn't like a complete epidemic on the defensive line right now. But you have no certain future beyond. We're debating whether this guy's worth paying. He should absolutely be worth paying after what they put into him. Peyton Turner, we have no idea what he's going to be. They're maybe a year or two away from having nobody on that line after they put everything into it the
Yep.
last few years. And man, if they made the same investment in trying to be set up to have a more certain thing at quarterback, as much as they put everything in there. Maybe the whole feel of this thing's different, but everything they put into this pass rush and it might be
It's
gone
crazy.
in a year or two.
Yeah, I mean, Peyton Turner, is he here to replace Cam Jordan? Or is he here to replace Marcus Davenport? And right now, he doesn't look like he's set up to replace either
Well,
one.
one should be here to replace Cam, the other one should be here to step into that other
Yeah.
void, and they might not have anybody
Yeah.
in any of those seats. It's just really, really crazy.
And yeah, I don't think Onyemata is going to be back because they got to save money somewhere, and his production has dipped so well. Like somebody else might invest in what he was a couple years ago, but the Saints know all too well that they haven't been able to recapture that. So now both defensive tackle spots are even bigger question marks than the defensive end spot.
This the last year of his contract?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So he just walks after this year, potentially?
Yeah. And that has been the pillar of this team since 2017. Defensive line has been the most successful. Running back and defensive line have been the two most successful position groups. And boy, oh boy, that is bleak to think about, that they might need to replace all 4 starting positions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's been up a little bit the last few weeks. He's been playing a little bit better on Yamada. Yeah, I'm gonna just go back to my same answer on Davenport. What are they trying to do? Like, are they trying to stay good? Or are they trying to rebuild? I think he might actually be somewhat affordable, but he's probably gonna get paid more than people expect too, because he does give you
Mhm.
some rush on the interior.
My
It's extremely valuable. And
my only disagreement with you there is you said if they do a total teardown, neither one of us expect a total teardown, but you say that would be a 3-year plan. I think
I think it's a 10-year plan.
but I think the allure of taking that approach is in theory, just taking 1 year off and then being competitive again in 2 years. And I could see them signing Marcus Davenport to a 5-year deal, thinking, look, we might have to lick our wounds a little bit and catch up on the books in 2023 and develop a quarterback in 2023, but hopefully we're already in the playoff mix in 2024. That could be a path to re-signing Marcus Davenport too. A soft rebuild.
It could be, but I just don't. I think
Yeah.
if you let go, like you're just.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's what I'm saying. I don't think they're going to totally rebuild this team, but I think they might shed some of the older, like I think they might let Michael Thomas and David Onyemata go. And we'll talk about Demario Davis and Cameron Jordan being tough decisions. They might let Andrus Peat go, that kind of thing. They might not spend $20 million at quarterback. They might take a cheap year at quarterback, but a soft reset, more like what we saw them do in 2015, not the we're not going to compete for a few years. And since Marcus Davenport's still in his 20s and could theoretically be a guy that's helping you win in 2024, 2025, I could see them being like, them considering him a young player that is part of a future plan.
15, 16 might have been a harder reset. I think Drew and Sean masked how much of a reset it actually was. And then them getting lucky in 17.
But they
put
also
them back
had
on track.
Teron. They also had Cam. Like, I mean, they had some real pillars on that team. I don't know who even the Teron and Cam are on this team right now.
Well, Cam is one of them.
I mean, Teron when he was one of the 2 or 3 best left tackles in the league.
Yeah, I'm just
Cam when
messing
he was
with you.
one of the 2 or 3 best defensive ends in the team.
It's probably it'd be Marshawn and somebody else.
Ramchak.
I mean, Werner may end up being, Werner may end up being the leader. I think Werner's probably the future leader of this defense, so they're probably looking at him as someone that can. So, what about Cam Jordan? What do you say, Cam? Do you want to?
I let Cam finish his career here. I do.
Yeah.
He's someone that I just keep around. I think he's important for the culture. I keep him on the team. I could see it going either way. I think Cam would probably be realistic about his situation too. And unless, look, Cam might be at a point where he says, "Look, I want to go chase a ring," and
that's what I was going to ask you. Like, does Cam? Do you go to Cam and say, "Cam, do you want to? I mean, we want you here. We want you to be the all-time sack leader."
I let Cam make the decision.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Or do you say, Cam,
they're not going to pay him probably what he's worth? So he would be a guy who would take a hometown discount to keep playing here, and if he wouldn't, then exactly. You let Cam make this. I think he wants to break Ricky Jackson's record.
I do
mean,
too.
He's got kids who live here. He's embedded in this community. His dad played his whole career with the Vikings. Like those things mean something to Cam. So I don't think he will force you financially to make a tough decision with him. I don't think he'll say, "Hey, you got to pay me $20 million. I'm Cam Jordan." He's already taken a little less, a couple times in his career. So I think he is more likely to stay than even some of the other veterans we're about to talk about.
Yeah. Demario Davis, Nick, I'm just open floor on that one.
Again, man, it depends on the path of the team. And if you're not trying, then I let him go. I mean, that's just kind of where it's at. If you're saying this is a season where we aren't competing, I'm letting them go. I'm thinking about it too, and this is going to get us probably off the rails a little bit and circling back to the beginning of the conversation. But I do think if you're going into the season and you're saying, we're not getting the quarterback, we're not doing this, we're letting these guys go, we're going to reset. I think you just keep DA as your coach for another year. I mean, I don't, who are you hiring? Like
Right.
who's coming in for that situation? They aren't coming in and saying, you don't got a first round pick, you're getting rid of all your players. Teddy Bridgewater's my starting quarterback. You got no draft picks, your cap's bad. Who are you hiring? Like, I think it's impossible to hire anyone. So if you do make a shift in direction, even if you're getting a new OC, like it's just, I think you have to run it back if that's your approach, and then that's when you do the reset, because I think it becomes extremely difficult to get anybody worthwhile in this situation, and then you're just making change to make change. Like your situation has to be attractive on some front.
Right.
So if you have nothing going on, there has to at least be a commitment to offensively having some level of success. Maybe you trade Sean immediately and you have that glimmer of hope back, but if your plan is to reset, it makes it hard, I think, to change the direction of your franchise.
It's like the new coach is like, wait, you're putting me in for the intentional walk? Like,
yeah, right.
Can't you put me in after the intentional walk?
Yeah, it's almost like you just say, hey, with Sean, you just take a future pick. Give me a first round pick in the next draft. I'll have my first round pick. You let
it's not a crazy idea because a
year, and then the next year you got a coach who can come in and he can. You got a coach next year. He's got 2 first round picks. You got cap room. You got some guys with some talent on the room, and you got.
It's a cleaner situation.
Yeah.
It's a much cleaner situation. I'm not saying to keep DA as a sacrificial lamb for another year, but I'm saying it's a train of thought that when you have so few options as a team, I think every potential option becomes a really attractive one. And I like I said, I was thinking, I was like, if with Sean Payton, if you can get something for him, if you can push the compensation out a little bit, I think you set yourself up for maybe a 2017 type reboot with obviously the quarterback hoping you strike gold there. So
when you draft like 2017, that's the thing.
You can't count on that.
But that's not going to happen, right? But you just need to nail. You just need to. You need to make sure you don't waste those picks. That's probably
so many people assume that you're going to draft the right players, and I just think it's an extremely unrealistic.
Tough.
Yeah, it's an extremely. It's just, we got all these picks and everything's going to work out, and we're going to draft the quarterback, and we're going to draft the pass rusher, and we're going to draft, and it just doesn't. It doesn't happen.
Teams spend millions of dollars and ton of resources on picking a quarterback, and they get it wrong like 80% of the time.
Yeah, if history has shown us anything, it's that people cannot scout quarterbacks, and it's a total crapshoot, and everybody's just trying to find one, and you just want to be the team with one of the best 20 so that you can fool yourself into believing that something's going to happen every July.
Right. I mean, even Sean Payton, he had the kid from Colorado State that he loved, and then Taysom Hill was the future, and as smart of an offensive mind as he was, he didn't.
He used to walk around saying we got 2 of them in the building. We got 2 of them in the building, and they had 0 in the building.
None in the building, right? And
you're giving up on Taysom. You've given up on the Taysom quarterback. That could be what 20. That could be the 2023 plan. We're keeping DA. We're resetting the salary cap. We're holding on to our draft picks, and now we're finally gonna try the Taysom thing.
Hey
out.
man, go hire the Bills OC and have them put the Josh Allen offense in and see what happens. If you're gonna go with Taysom, do something with someone that's thinking.
Is Greg Roman available? Does Greg Roman have a son?
I'm telling you. Well, I tell Sean Payton, hey, look, man, come fix it.
Back to Demario Davis. So this is what's so interesting about the exercise. I think that's why this is a valuable podcast, because there are a lot of tear it down people out there. And then the question becomes, and Nick had a great post about that this week, which sort of inspired this podcast, which is, all right, you're a tear it down person. Let's go one at a time. You tearing him down. You also tearing him down. You also tearing him down. And it's tough because I lean a little more toward the tear down, but you heard where I do it is I save money at quarterback. And I've said I'm not signing next year's version of Tyrann Mathieu and Jarvis Landry.
No,
30 somethings who can only help you for a year. But I have a tough time deciding on Marcus Davenport. I have a tough time deciding on Cam Jordan, and I have a tough time deciding on Demario Davis too, because he's pretty cheap. He's a guy who's been taking way less than he deserves. Now, I think the bottom is going to drop out on Demario sooner than later. I don't think it's dropped out this year. I don't think this is as close to his prime seasons with the Saints, but I think he's still really effective. I think he's probably good for the locker room. He's probably a guy that I still want to be around if I don't want to present the we're just totally giving up concept, and he's not going to cost too much, but he's not getting another contract. That's for sure. Yeah.
I think after the last pod too, there was like we got some tweets, and I think there's like I think people were construing it the wrong way too, like about tearing it down, going for it. Like they thought you were a complete tear it down guy. They thought I was like a pedal to the metal guys. I'm saying like, no, if the highway says 65, I'm going 65. Yeah. I'm not dropping the 60.
You're not going 35 with people honking at you.
I'm not going 70. I'm going a simple 65. I'm checking the boxes. I'm going to the car lot. I'm getting a Nissan Altima, and I'm driving the speed limit.
You're on paper going to be a 7-10 team that could get lucky, and at least
Nick,
there's something to play for.
And I think that level of
you're 65 miles an hour, Nick. So you're just doing what the law says.
Yeah, like I think Daniel Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo's getting a Nissan Altima and going 65. I'm not trying. I'm driving right by the Audi lot. I'm not looking at Range Rovers unless one of those guys. If a Ferrari's available, I'm stopping there. But if there isn't one, I'm just driving by on my Nissan Altima.
I think you're paying Nissan Armada prices for those quarterbacks. That's my problem.
I mean, but I think they'll get paid commensurate. So Mike, I think they do.
Mike, what's your speed limit? Just give me your number. Nick is going 65 and 65.
I also think I'm going 65, but I just disagree with Nick on the my quarterback is making 65 mile per hour money. I think his quarterback's making 80 money. Yeah, that's our only disagreement that we've had.
I think I'm going a comfortable 65, and you're trying to go 65 in like a 78 Crown Vic, and there's a little bit of smoke coming out.
I think Mike is going 65.
I think Teddy and Dalton are Nissan Altima. I think $20 million Jimmy Garoppolo is like, is a car that
Mike,
I
don't think you're going 65, Mike. I think you're probably doing 55. You're saying 65, but you're talking like 55.
The only ones I've let go, the ones I've let go so far for sure. I mean, coaching, I need to see what the coaching looks like, but I'm probably letting Jameis Winston go unless we see some new renewing of vows that we haven't seen, and Michael Thomas too. So I've saved money in those two areas, and I'm not spending money to replace either one of those guys. I'm going to let Andrews Pete go that we haven't gotten to yet. I'm probably letting David Onyemata go.
Tyrann Mathieu.
Tyrann Mathieu's money is guaranteed. Otherwise, I would be letting him go too. But
somebody might want him for $7 million. So yeah, he might have some trade value.
He could have some trade value. Yeah, any of these guys. That was another thing they did in 2015. They sneaky traded didn't they get like a 5th rounder for Malcolm or for Ben Grubbs? Like some guys you weren't thinking of with some trade value.
Kenny Stills got traded.
In theory, could you trade Andrews Pete for a 5th rounder? Could you trade if you can, this team doesn't believe in 3rd-day draft picks, so I have trouble believing in 3rd-day draft picks. But if there's some little, there was some hidden value there. Like Nick mentioned, you're going to save a little money on Carl Granderson if you let him go. You're going to save a little money on Nick Vannett if you let him go.
I'll say this, Mike.
There's ways.
I don't know if they don't believe in 3rd-round draft picks. I think that 3rd-day draft pick, I think they thought their roster was so talented that they wanted to really target the guys they wanted in higher rounds, and they figured that the risk that comes with those associated later round draft picks is not worth it.
I don't hate that approach. I hate the giving away future firsts, but I don't mind that.
I never liked that. I've always been against trading future and first round picks. I even didn't like when they I didn't even like when they traded for Kamara. Then I saw how good he was, and I thought it was a good trade. But I'll be honest, the day they traded for Kamara, I was like, why are you trading your future draft? I'll be honest, when your team is bad, right? And so but I think that when you're in a position where you're going to need to fill some spots, I think you're going to need to strike gold a little bit in those later rounds. You're going to need to find, some guys in the later rounds who are going to be able to contribute to your team. I mean, it was once upon a time where they were able to do that as a team. You get guys like Jari Evans and Zach Strief and the Marcus Coastons of the world. I know that was like a lifetime ago. Some people were in probably high school and now they're professionals. But, I think when you're in a place where this team currently is, I think that's going to have to be the approach. And if Nick is 65, Mike is fit. Mike, I'm making you at 55. You can say what you want to say.
I'm 10 miles per hour. I'm 10 miles per hour slower than Nick. My disagreement is I think I'm 65 and I think he's 75. That's the only difference. But I agree I'm 10 miles per hour slower than Nick.
Trying to be an average team is having an average quarterback. That's going the average speed. If you're trying to go below it, you're
yeah.
not trying to go. You're not trying to be average. You're trying to be below average.
You're shopping in the premium quarterback section.
I'm not.
No, I mean,
Daniel Jones is not a premium quarterback. That is
no. I'll take I take
him and Jimmy are the same. They're replacement level quarterbacks.
But here's
Teddy
what I'll
Bridgewater
say.
is a backup this year. You're on the discount buy here pay here lot.
Yeah. I don't think
I'm above Trevor Simeon level. I feel like he's 55.
Yeah, well,
you're just on the front row of the buy here pay here lot.
But
Trevor's
keeping in mind, just to make sure I'm making this clear, I'm not going with Teddy Bridgewater as my long-term plan. I'm going with Teddy Bridgewater, and I'm drafting a quarterback.
Oh, I'd be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You're
going Garoppolo and draft.
I'm not just someone a mid-level quarterback, and I'm drafting. Yeah, they're a short-term answer, but I just don't want to be a horrible team. And look, I'll be surprised if the Saints actually bought. Like, I don't even think they would bottom all the way out, but we could be.
I don't think they'll bottom because so here's where we left off was Cam Jordan, Demario Davis. They're two of the toughest decisions on the team, and I would be surprised. Like, that's bottoming out. Letting those guys go, in addition to some of the more obvious let goes, would be the total tear it down. And I don't expect.
I don't know if I see Demario as a total tear it down. I think Demario could be in a different place in his career, and they're in a different place, and they just kind of a mutual parting of ways. Yeah. I don't even think Cam going the total tear it down would be like, and this is the one I read about on Twitter, is like trading away your young players.
Marshawn,
and it's just like, well, if you're trading away good, useful players, you have to replace. Those are just more good, useful players you got to replace.
What would it take for you, Nick, for you to trade Marshawn? What would be your compensation if if someone asked you for Marshawn? What would you ask back for?
A first plus, it's a first plus. It'd take a lot. I mean, that's not a guy I want to get rid of. I think he's still got a lot of runway left on him.
What about Alvin? Alvin's the bigger question.
Same question. Yeah, same question.
Alvin has a much shorter shelf life. Like, Alvin's probably not playing for this team in 2025. I don't think he's due $25 million. So you've got 2 more years of Alvin, and unfortunately, Alvin's a running back who
he's going to be suspended to start next year.
Right. But running backs all of a sudden hit a wall. Do you heading into next year, if somebody offers you the exact Christian McCaffrey trade, or if somebody just offers you the 27th pick in the draft for Alvin, do you trade Alvin?
Well, the good thing is Alvin doesn't get touches anymore, so he's got a little bit more runway left on him. So, if I got the CMAC package, I would definitely consider it.
With a suspension.
When was the last time they won a game? When was the last time the Saints?
I don't think I'd trade him for a second.
When was the last time they won a game without Alvin Kamara?
Yeah. I think I would want Alvin to be part of my culture too.
What would you trade Kevin for?
Nick, don't answer that.
I don't know.
I'm not. You have to answer the phone. I mean, you have to answer the phone, or you're not doing your job.
But you know what? I think that's where I am with the team. I don't want to trade Marshawn Lattimore. I would take the same approach with Demario probably as I took with Cam, to be honest with you, because I think there's value in maybe. I think it helps people running for another year to have that guy around, right? I think you got to do. You think you got to think about. There's some short-term moves that can affect things long-term, right? And I also think that you got to look at what you want another coach to inherit. Usually when coaches inherit, if a coach sees a team where they can win and they see some guys there that they can work with, I think you can attract better candidates versus if you bottom this thing out. But at the same time, I don't want to trade Marshawn, but if you want to give me a first and a second for him, I don't have the draft capital, right? I'm not really excited about trading Kamara, but I think that if you get the McCaffrey package, which he's more available than McCaffrey, right? And so I just think
people view CMAC a little higher for some reason, and it's weird. Like, I've heard that from people in the league, and I'm like, how could you even think that way?
Maybe it's where he was drafted. Maybe people can't get the draft position out of their heads. I don't know, but McCaffrey is just very unavailable, and that's not me. I think he's an outstanding player. Well, I had him higher than Kamara, I think, in the draft, right? But he's just not available. And so I'm not trying to trade these guys, but if someone wants to give me a superstar package, and listen, if you want to trade 2024 first to me, that's fine. Because that's my reload year, right? I'm not gonna make that bad analogy, but you're just loading up with resources, and then you give yourself a chance to strike. And I will say that if you are resource loaded up, then that was your job as a coach. This job as a head coach for this team becomes a lot more attractive to coaches because you're like, all right, well, yeah, they need to be better, but look at all these resources and picks that they have. So I think it's just a little bit. I think they got to straddle the fence for how they play this thing going forward, right? Are we going to blow it up? No, but if someone wants to make us offers on players that we can't refuse, then I have to realize where I am as a team, and I think that's the approach that the Saints are going to have to make.
When they beat the Rams 24-0, then we're going to change all of our opinions this week.
No.
Listen,
No.
let me tell you what I'm proud of. I have consistently said I picked them to lose the Raiders game. I picked them to lose every game this week. I mean, not this week. I've been picking them to lose like almost every game because I said like until
It's
they
true.
show me that
Yeah,
they're
he sends me that text every week. Yep.
They're not going
Nick's
to
the opposite. Nick comes in with some optimism, and it's been sucked out. Like Nick even like went into Ravens game thinking I could see a path, and
There was a path.
It's gone.
There
now.
was a path.
Nick has stopped seeing. He has stopped having visions of what a Saints win might look like.
The only game I had strong opinions about was the Raiders one, and that one was when last week I was positive they were getting. I thought they were getting.
He put me out on Twitter. He was like, "Yo, this is the text message thread between me and Kevin." It wasn't like abstract. It was like, this is what Kevin said. This is what I said. Kevin was wrong and I was right. And I was like, all right, well, yeah, that's my boy.
I thought they might have won I thought they had figured some things out on defense though, and then
that's fair. It's a fair thing to make. But I'll say this, right? It took me a long time. Well, not a long time, but it was a process for me to get down on this team. And then now it'll be a process for me to think the opposite of it. And I think that's just the way to like I know we live in a world of hot takes and like one loss and people are down on them, but like progressively I was like, oh, they're getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So for the belief to start to come back, I think it has to be the same process.
I thought all season long, I don't think I picked them to beat Cincinnati. I didn't pick them to beat Arizona. I didn't pick them to beat the Raiders. I thought they had a chance in all those games. Even the Ravens, I thought they had a chance. But at every one of those stages, I always thought there was a better version of the Saints waiting to heal up and that we were going to watch during the second half of the season. That's what's been drained from me, which is so disappointing, especially since it's like all their other good players who weren't even injured in the first half of the season are now the injured ones, Werner and McCoy. And like, that's what's so disappointing. There was a time we thought Mike might come back eventually. Like I no longer have a vision of this team ever being good and healthy. You know, I have them just playing out the string now in my head.
Yeah. I think there's a world that exists where they, and I'm not trying to, my take on this team is kind of set in stone for this year, but there's a scenario that exists that I see where they get healthy maybe later in this year and they kind of start splitting games, like 50, lose one, win one, lose one, win one. I could see that happening.
Sure.
I don't think they're going to string a bunch together, but I could see them kind of reverting back to the means and being an average team in the NFL if they get some of these guys healthy. Because Marshawn Lattimore can make you a good defense. You know, healthy Davenport. You know, listen, I think the coverage holds off a little bit longer, and the pressure just starts looking. The pass rush just starts looking a lot better. So, but I don't think they're going to be a good team in no way, shape, or form.
Yeah, bring us home, Kev. We got to go to practice.
Yeah, they're not going to be a good team on Sunday, and they're not going to be able to stop Aaron Donald. They just need to hope the Rams are somehow worse. That ended up being the formula to the Raiders' victory that we didn't quite realize at the time.
Yeah,
they need the Rams to be the worst team. That's how they win this one.
Well, that's hard to do when you're the Saints, but all right, the boss said it's time to bring it home. Let's bring it home. He told me and Mike that we're working too hard because they got more work to do and I don't. So, man, we bringing you a hour and some change worth of Saints content in the dark time. So we here, we're working. Sign up, support us. We need your support. We love your support. You guys are why we get to do this. We love doing this. This is fun. We can laugh while they're losing. So sign up for NewOrleans.Football and just pick the best tier that works for you. Thank you guys for supporting us. We'll see you next week. We out.